What's up, guys? Mickle here, and there is a ton going on in the cryptocurrency industry right now. First of all, we have some important updates to go over in regards to the SEC's new cases against Coinbase and Binance. Guys, these two cases are going to be absolutely massive for getting clarity going forward. I have some important things to show you in regards to these two cases, and despite the fact that the SEC is cracking down everywhere, it feels like cryptocurrencies are pinned up against the wall. I want to talk to you why we are actually currently winning the battle against regulators, and I am actually more confident than I have ever been that we are going to have regulations for this asset class very soon. Guys, this is a perspective not a lot of people have right now, so I think you're really going to want to see this. Last of all, towards the end of the video, I really want to show you some crazy documents coming out right now in regards to Ripple and the United States Federal Reserve. Guys, I am absolutely blown away by the amount of documents coming out right now, putting Ripple right next to the Federal Reserve and the FedNow platform. Make sure to stick around to the end of the video to see that. You are not going to want to miss it. Like always, your support means so much to this channel. Make sure to take a second to like this video and subscribe to my channel. It's really going to help me out so much. Also, if you ever need a good place to buy some XRP or the Flare token, make sure to check out my favorite exchange Uphold down in the description of this video. With that said though, let's jump right into it, and I hope you guys enjoy the content. So I want to start this video off and actually talk about a perspective that I don't think a lot of people have right now, and that is we are currently winning the war against regulators. Now, I know that might sound shocking to you in light of all the crazy things we have seen from the SEC over the last couple weeks, but guys, I was actually on a Twitter space earlier today with this guy named Balaji, and he is super famous, especially when it comes to crypto and Bitcoin specifically, but he was one of the most elegant speakers I have heard talk in a while, and I think he made a critical point. At the end of the day, the only reason we are getting so much attention from regulators right now, the only reason we are getting cracked down on by the SEC is because they can no longer ignore us. For the longest time, cryptocurrencies were so small, they were so niche, all these different regulators could just simply ignore the industry and say, you know what, we're not paying attention to this. But the fact of the matter is, cryptocurrencies are getting so big and gaining so much mainstream adoption all over the world that regulators are finally being forced to stop ignoring this asset class and to finally confront it head on. Now, it is not going to be perfect, and we are going to have to go through wars, we're going to have to go through battles, just like Ripple is going through right now with the SEC. But at the end of the day, this was a necessary step that we were ultimately going to be faced with if we were ever going to get mainstream adoption. This is a huge step forward in just showing that this asset class is ready for prime time. And yes, we have to make it through the regulators, and the regulators in no way are doing the right thing here. But at the end of the day, what regulators would rather do is just completely ignore this asset class, keep it in the shadow realms of our financial system, and simply say, hey, don't pay attention to this. It's not important. We're just going to ignore it. Instead, regulators feel threatened by this asset class. They see it getting massive, and they understand now that they are no longer able to simply ignore it and hope it goes away. I think this is a massive validation that we are actually a lot closer to mainstream adoption than many people understand. And it's so critical to realize that attacking companies like Coinbase, attacking companies like Ripple is not a position of power for the SEC. A position of power for the SEC is lack of clarity. The SEC having to attack Ripple, having to attack Coinbase is actually showing they are in a place of weakness because, guys, these are not the fights the SEC wants to have. The SEC is getting their butt kicked by Ripple. I have a feeling they're going to get their butt kicked by Coinbase. So that tells me the SEC is not launching these attacks from a position of power, but instead out of desperation in a last-ditch effort to try to put the brakes on this industry. Guys, ultimately, I don't think the SEC has a chance of stopping this industry. All the bad people, all the people who are trying to stop crypto at the SEC eventually will be washed away by the revolving door of the agency, and we're going to get people in there who will do the right thing. In the meantime, though, the technology is not going to go away. Builders are just going to keep on building, and this industry is just going to get stronger and stronger until the SEC and other regulators are forced to capitulate. Balaji really put this out eloquently in this Twitter space, and I just thought you guys needed to hear that because I think it's so important. So now I want to move on and talk about some shocking developments in the Binance case against the SEC and the Coinbase case against the SEC. Now, what we are learning is that the SEC is fully trying to kill Binance. The SEC asked the courts to freeze all of Binance's assets, and this is an extraordinary measure. Essentially, the SEC is saying that Binance could implode at any minute, and essentially the court needs to freeze all of Binance assets in a drastic measure to prevent retail investors from getting hurt. Now, what we know is Binance is nowhere close to a situation like FTX, and that's essentially what the SEC is claiming right now. And from what I have heard from different lawyers, the situation at Binance would have to be a lot worse than it is in order to get this movement to freeze all of Binance's assets. Essentially, what the SEC is trying to do is get these assets frozen before the court case even happens, and even lawyers who have been very skeptical about Binance has said this is pretty much a long shot by the SEC. What we are learning from this, though, is that the SEC is definitely salty about CZ coming out and exposing their FTX connections, and I think what we're seeing right now is a full-on retaliation by the SEC to try to kill Binance. Now, freezing Binance's assets would be trying to kill them for sure. It has nothing to do with protecting retail investors, because at the end of the day, the assets the SEC wants to freeze are literally the assets of the retail investor. Just a shocking development. It really does show where the SEC's head's at in regards to some of these cases. Guys, they are trying to kill these companies straight up, and I have a feeling this one in particular has a lot to do with what Binance did to FTX and the connections that Binance exposed with FTX and the SEC. Now, I want to keep moving and talk about something pretty interesting in the Ripple SEC case. Now, we know next week we should see the Hinman documents outside of settlement, but something very interesting that happened is the House Financial Service Chairman, Patrick McHenry, actually scheduled a cryptocurrency hearing the day those emails are supposed to come out. Now, I think this is really putting some pressure on the SEC, because essentially we are going to get these damning documents made public in the middle of a cryptocurrency hearing, and I don't think this is a coincidence at all. Not only that, but we have a bunch of different high-profile people in crypto joining John Dayton on a live stream to talk about these emails. Guys, essentially what's happening here is both Congress and retail are essentially creating a massive press event where they are going to start exposing the conflicts of interest, the bad faith regulation that has been taking place at the SEC. Now, one thing that comes to my mind that I think is very important to understand is we have seen the United States government, and specifically SEC, act in very strange ways in order to prevent information, especially bad information, from coming out. If you guys remember, when FTX originally blew up, Sam Bankman-Fried was supposed to actually testify in front of Congress, and I think we all know a lot of things probably would have been exposed if people in Congress were able to drill Sam on questions under oath. But what took place right before that was supposed to happen? Suddenly, out of nowhere, the DOJ stepped in, threw him in a prison cell, and said, you know what, you can't ask him questions, he's going away forever. Now, this was very interesting because essentially a lot of people in Congress were saying we had some really important questions we needed answers from him that the public wanted to see. But before we could get those answers, Sam Bankman-Fried was taken away. So this is really interesting because I have a feeling it is possible we could see the same thing with a settlement in the Ripple SEC case, where right before we were about to get these emails, right before this massive hit to the SEC was about to be made public, the SEC out of nowhere settles the case to prevent the public from seeing the emails. Now, I will tell you, there are a lot of experts following this case who don't think the SEC is going to settle. They think the SEC is going to go the distance. Me personally, I have always thought the SEC would settle if it meant settling this case or handing over the Hinman emails. I've laid it out in a couple of videos. I think ultimately the SEC's best path forward is to settle, to also prevent people like Coinbase and Binance to use this decision for fair notice or something else like that. Let's see how it plays out. ultimately, we are so close to the end either way, and I think whether we settle or we win outright via summary judgment, Ripple and XRP holders are about to have a massive head start on the entire crypto market when it comes to clarity, and that's one of those things that makes me look back at this entire case and look at some of the things happening behind the scenes and make me wonder, was this a plan all along? Guys, I cannot get over the amount of documents I am seeing right now that say the United States has two instant payment platforms, one being FedNow, one being Ripple. This is so interesting to me that these documents would even put Ripple's payment platform next to FedNow. I mean, you have things like Swift GPI. You have all kinds of different companies like MasterCard and Visa working on how to send money all around the world, but the one company that shows up next to FedNow more than anyone is Ripple. This is absolutely fascinating to me, and it is just so mind-boggling that while we have the SEC in this case against Ripple, while we have all this uncertainty and FUD around XRP, we have the Federal Reserve directly working with Ripple to create a new payments platform. We have entire countries, we have US territories building CBDCs on the XRP ledger. All of that coupled with the information that XRP is likely going to be the first cryptocurrency with certain clarity in the market, guys, it really makes you look back at this entire Ripple SEC case and wonder, how much of this was just supposed to play out like this? How much of this was the United States saying, hey, we need a framework for cryptocurrencies in the United States. We can't have Congress just arbitrarily make up some standards. We need a case to define what is a crypto commodity, and this case was always meant to be that case. I have a feeling we're gonna get an answer to that when this case is over. Does XRP get the clarity it needs to be fully functional in the United States? And what kind of announcements do we see out of Ripple when this case is over and once the SEC is off their back? Guys, if it all plays out like I think it is, I think we are about to have massive institutional adoption right around the corner, and Ripple and XRP are going to lead the way. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for coming. I hope you enjoyed this update. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe. It really does mean so much. And for now, Mickle out.